Hello, and welcome to Casual Tech Review. When I first got into PC flipping, I looked at a lot of the big YouTubers like Zach's Tech Turf, who you can see here on the screen, and he talks a lot about the importance of aesthetics when you're doing builds, making sure they look really, really good. And that really appealed to me. So I copied that blueprint and I focused on building not just capable, but great looking PCs using quality parts. In the first few months that I was flipping PCs and building different things and trying things out, I was having some pretty good success and doing well in my market. Well, in the last few months, I've observed a new seller enter the market who doesn't appear to prioritize these things at all.
Nope.
And he's doing really, really well. So I got to ask, do aesthetics really matter to PC buyers? So, how are we going to figure out are aesthetics important to buyers in this video? There's a couple things we're going to do. Number one, we're going to analyze my local market with this new seller in particular and look for any effective sales trends that we can observe. Number two, we're going to compare and contrast like builds that he has between ones that I've had and see what we can learn. And lastly, number three, we're going to try to learn any lessons from the differences. And just to clear up any misconceptions, nothing I say in this video is for the purpose of hating on this other seller. He's absolutely beating the brakes off me in sales. So I am merely looking at this, asking questions, trying to learn, and maybe I'll get some feedback from some of you all as well to help everybody in their PC flipping. A quick overview of my PC selling strategy is I prioritize looks and performance. I try to cram as much value as well as high quality aesthetics into the build with high quality components. I use cable extensions. I've been experimenting spray painting some parts, and I make sure, especially when it comes to power supplies, that I use just quality parts. I spend a ton of time on cable management and try to make sure the builds look clean and nice and organized. I follow all of the advice that I've learned from other great PC flippers. I spend a good amount of time taking nice, high quality photos for my ads, and I think that's borne out with the way that my sales have generally gone. From November to May, it's about 6 months. I've sold 13 PCs. That's about what I would have wanted. That's about the pace I want. About 2 or 3 a month is pretty good. And I've sold 8 in the last 3 months. So it's been a little bit slow. It's actually been a while since I've sold one. Conversely, this new seller does not appear to prioritize the general aesthetics of a build to the same degree that I do. Sometimes he has cable extensions, RGB lights, sometimes not. Sometimes it's pretty bare bones. Cable management, I've also noticed, pretty poor in some instances. I'll show some photos that he's used in some of his ads where the cables are just kind of haphazardly thrown in there. He doesn't look like he spends much time. I've not seen a picture of the backside of one of his computers where the cable management magic would actually happen. Aesthetics aside, right? That's one thing that doesn't affect the performance of the build. One thing that I have noticed is that he does appear to be willing to use lower quality parts. And I mentioned power supplies earlier. It's an important part of the build and can definitely have an impact on everything. And you can see right here, he's got an Aries Game power supply in this computer. If you consult the PSU tier list, that is an F tier power supply, replace immediately, and he's got it prominently featured in his build. I would never use a power supply like that in a build that I was selling to someone, so that bothers me a little bit. Another oversight that I observe in some of his builds is poor optimization for cooling. Here's a PC that doesn't appear to have any intake fans whatsoever. It's the Cooler Master Q300L or whatever this thing is called. He uses this case a bunch of times, and I don't see any fans at the front or the side of the case to bring air in, just the exhaust fan in the back. Like, how can you do that? How can you put a PC together for somebody that doesn't even have proper airflow? When I was going through the builds that I can see on his profile that he's marked as sold, I made a list of them here and put down the most important components in them: the processor, graphics card, RAM, storage, what the RGB situation was like and what the sale price is, or at least is what he's reported it at on Facebook Marketplace. And I noticed there was a couple of really odd pairings of CPU and GPU that seemed to be poorly matched. Here's one right here. You have um, an Intel 10400F and a 3060 12 gigabyte. If you put that into the bottleneck calculator, which again, I know it's not perfect, et cetera, and so forth, but at 1080p, that combo has an 11.4% processor bottleneck. So it's just not a good pair. Here is a build that he did with a Ryzen 5 4500 and a 4060 Ti. He sold this build for $1,300. And you can see here the processor bottleneck is over 20%. The 4500 is just not that great of a processor. The 4060 Ti is a way more capable GPU than that. It's a $1,300 sale, and they're not well matched together. Here is a Ryzen 5 3600X, great little processor, and he's got it paired with a 6500 XT, giving you a 12.3% graphic card bottleneck. So that kind of bugs me too, that he just doesn't seem to be pairing all of his builds together well to really give the best performance. Some of them are excellent, right? Here's a 12600K and a 6700 XT, great pairing. A 12600KF and a 3070 Ti, great pairing. So they're not all like that, but enough of them are that it just kind of causes me to scratch my head. And my last kind of observation of his selling process is his Facebook ad, kind of how he sets his ads up. And typically on the front of his, he'll have a quick overview video and then pan up to the computer playing Fortnite or whatever, as that's a pretty common game that people want to know if the computer will run. And then he'll have a series of 3 or 4 pictures, which I think are pretty poorly done for the most part. There's a lot of clutter going on, and the lighting's not always good, and it doesn't even highlight all of the parts of the PC. And that's what his ads are. The descriptions vary somewhat, but some of them are not very specific. He'll say Intel i7 processor, but it doesn't even say what the processor is. So again, I don't find that to be very helpful or beneficial for the buyer to not be very specific and accurate as to what parts are in the build. So despite all of these things, between March and the present, he sold 33 PCs. 33 PCs that I can find on Facebook Marketplace. Maybe he's sold more. Maybe he's done some commission builds. I don't know. But that's phenomenal. I mean, he's absolutely killing it. He's doing like 2 to 3 computers per week. So good for him. As I looked at all the data that I'd collected by looking over his sales and comparing them to some of mine, and we had a couple that were really, really comparable. Here he's got a 12600K and a 6700 XT with 32 gigs of RAM. Decent looking case. I sold one very similar to this. He had 2 terabytes of storage. I only had 1. He sold his for $950. I sold mine for $895. So we're pretty much right on par there. So not all of his stuff was wild. Some of it was perfectly in keeping with what I would expect. But I did come to a couple of conclusions looking at the totality of the data. The first conclusion that I've come to is aesthetics. They must not be as important to the general buyer as I assumed they were. A lot of his PCs, like I said, the cable management doesn't look great. The pictures and the videos, I don't think are that descriptive. He's got RGB stuff in some, not in others, and he's absolutely destroying me. So aesthetics must not be as important to your average buyer as it is to me. Number 2, this is something he's doing very well. You can see here he's got 5 stars, perfect, after 22 reviews. He must be doing good customer service. The little narratives that people are writing about him are all really positive. So kudos to him. He's doing a really good job interacting with customers and selling his PCs. And number 3, the price to performance ratio must be the most important thing. Like I said, he's doing 4 to 5 times better than I am. After going through this exercise, diving a little bit deeper into my main competitor, superior competitor sales. There's a few things that I'm going to change and some things that I know I'm going to keep the same. First thing is I'm going to continue to use quality parts. I'm not going to sacrifice and start putting low quality PSUs and storage drives and that kind of thing in my PCs. I don't care if that isn't the best thing for my bottom line or my sales. I believe those are important, and I want to make sure people have good quality computers. So I will not be using parts that I don't think are good quality. Number two, I am going to start to mix in some more performance oriented builds that if the aesthetics happen, great. But if they don't, I'm going to make sure that it's performance focused. So if the RGB doesn't happen, the RGB is not going to happen. I'm going to pass on the cable extensions, make sure I do good cable management. That's always important. But I'm not going to spend extra money on aesthetics, and I'm going to kind of do a mixture. I still do enjoy doing the aesthetic builds. Those are the most fun for me. So I'm not going to give them up completely. And there is a group of people that appreciate those. But I am going to start to mix in some builds that are performance based. And number three, I'm going to continue to refine really good customer service with all the people that I deal with when it comes to answering questions and being upfront and helping people out. That's important. I'm going to continue to do that. So thanks for hanging in there with me on this little journey into my local market and kind of what the prevailing trends are. I was definitely shocked to learn that my preconceived notions about what the average person wanted are off. Like, yeah, I've got a lot of happy customers, but he's got like 4 times more. So I definitely need to start to tap into that part of the market, performance-based builds. And his sales numbers clearly demonstrate this. I'm going to shift my strategy and make sure I probably go 50-50 on that. And before I leave, 2 favors, well, 3 favors really. Number 1, like and subscribe. If you enjoy the content, there's more stuff like this coming. Number 2, if you have any input for me on some things you'd like to see me try, any advice on how I can do better in making a more appealing PC for Flippin, like leave a comment. I'd be happy to hear from you. And number 3, check out my buddy Ryan over at PCustoms. I'm going to link his channel in my description. He's doing some really awesome videos with some really great informative data on PC flipping and PC hardware. Check him out. Let him know that I sent you. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for watching.